be paying up to $10,000 more per year than unmarried couple living together in the same household. The Congressional Research Service picked up on that, as well as the Heritage Foundation. Even Minnesota Public Radio verified what Alan found. If you remember the profile of learning that we struggled with back from 1998 on, whereby the government was so involved in education that it was rating the teachers' program, classroom programs. Alan became involved with that issue first with the Maple River Education Association, which morphed into EdWatch. And EdWatch garnered some national attention over this, and Alan was instrumental in getting the profile of learning eventually overturned. This afternoon, I happened to pick up an April issue of the Washington Times that was laying around in one of my reading piles. And there's a review of Dennis Prager's book in there. Some of you know Dennis Prager. I don't pursue what he writes, but when I see what he writes, I read it. It's always very interesting. The book is Still the Best Hope, and it's advocating for Americanism is the headline of the article. And as I read the article, I thought, hey, this is about Alan Quist. He's our man. Prager goes on talking about how the left is a threat to issues of morality and religious issues. And we're in danger of being defeated by the leftism that promotes their agenda. The reviewer refers it to the stealth religion, the religion of the left. And so as I read this, I thought, here's the man we need to send to Washington to take care of these issues for us. Alan's has a very extensive background. He's an author of several books, I think one on abortion, one on Christianity, one on Fed education, which revolves around the profile of learning issue, etc. Alan Quist.
Take me just a second to get set up here. As a retired teacher, I can't speak without a visual aid. Let's see, here's the one I wanted. For starters. Is that going to be visible? Move over here instead. Yeah. Is that visible? Is that visible to everyone here? Oh, yeah. Hey, Stan. Don, thank you very kindly for the very, what should I say, generous introduction. I was especially struck by your description of Dennis Prager in his book, and partly because in my teaching career, and I'm really more of a teacher than I am a politician, I used one of Dennis Prager's books in one of my classes. Just an outstanding, outstanding writer. But on the more serious business, thank you everyone for coming. We have our work cut out for us, and I'd like to describe for a few minutes what that work is that's cut out for us as I see it. And then I'm going to open this up for questions. And I see we've got a second mic here. And I'm going to give that to Don Evanson, and he can go around and take any questions that anyone might have. And let me just clarify, sometimes people preface their questions by saying, Al, I hate to put you on the spot, but, and let me just tell you, go ahead, put me on the spot. That's what I'm here for. I intend for us to have a totally free, frank conversation. And what you're going to get from me is exactly what I see and the way I see it. And I would be happy to respond to any questions on anything you'd like to ask. But like I say, the task before us is very serious. And I should also say I'm going to begin with a description of the problem, and I don't want you to get too depressed because I think you know what it is. And then I'm going to go to what I believe we need to do to solve the problem. And then we'll take questions. But it seems to me we need to be future-oriented. What are we going to do? I don't think we benefit from bemoaning just where we are. I think we benefit from talking about the direction we need to take. Having said that, I am reminded of what Abraham Lincoln mentioned as he began his very famous Gettysburg Address. And I do have to tell you one story about that. And I'm going to try to keep the stories to a minimum. But then President Bill Clinton once used the phraseology, government of the people, by the people, and for the people, which I think we all are in favor of. And which he said, as stated in the Constitution of the United States. And then he corrected himself and said, no, in the Declaration of Independence. And many of you know that's actually in Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. But Lincoln began his Gettysburg Address by saying, and I'm going to paraphrase just a little bit, by saying that regarding the Civil War, by saying that the United States was being put to the test. And the test was whether a country conceived and born in liberty could long survive. And that's what Lincoln said was the test we were put to in the Civil War. I think it's very clear that even though in a lot of ways conditions are different today, nonetheless, we are being put to the same test. And the test we are being put to is the test of whether a nation conceived and born in liberty can long survive. That's the test. And we're going to talk this evening about how our country is threatened with regards to being a country of freedom. And we need to talk about what we need to do to get our country back on track. And being as I have this chart with me, I'm sure you expected I was going to say something about it. And I am. This chart describes our country's national debt. Going back to 1944, just happens to be the year I was born. I know I shouldn't say that because I'm giving my opposition easy fodder, okay? Because they can say, all you have to do is look at the date Quist was born until now and look at what's happened. That is a common type of political argument. But it starts in 1944, and it describes our national debt from 1944 to the present. And you can see what is clearly what mathematicians call an exponential curve, and you can see where the national debt is headed. And I think you know right now the debt exceeds our gross domestic product, that is all of our productivity for a year, and now is approximately $16 trillion. Now let me add to that, this debt has more than doubled in the last 7 years. That's the bad news. The good news is that it can't double again in the next 7 because we will be in default before that can happen. We are right now 5 years away from where Greece is today in terms of our debt to GDP ratio. And that should be a pretty sobering fact. And Washington and the Washington establishment is operating as though this doesn't exist. I mean, Washington operates as though the people are sitting around in a living room and there's an 800-pound gorilla in the living room, and this is the 800-pound gorilla, and nobody can see it. And I am staggered by the willingness of the federal government to look the other way in the face of this. But that is what we're dealing with. And I was very fascinated regarding the presidential debates, which I found very fascinating, and I was able to listen to a good share of them. But I was especially noted the fact that the matter of this debt rarely came up. And if it came up, only in passing. So it is not part of the conversation of the political elite. Okay? It's just not. And this is real. By the way, I just want you to know this is not something that I invented, that I sat down and decided, oh, I'm going to draw something. Okay. This chart is taken from a website called factcheck.org, and they check the accuracy of political advertisements. And they were checking the advertisement of one of the Republican candidates in Wisconsin for the U.S. Senate. And he had a chart similar to this, and they said, yeah, his chart is accurate. By the way, we have our own chart. And so this chart is from factcheck.org. They check the accuracy of political ads. So if you want them to check this chart, just contact them. And I think they'll say, yeah, that's our chart. So, how serious is this? Well, Milton Friedman, for instance, said there is no free lunch. That is, somebody has to pay. And again, Washington seems to act as though this is no big deal. I mean, so what? I mean, where's the real world, folks? So one of the ways I like to describe this, and it's totally accurate, is what this pictures is massive income redistribution from the next generation back to us. That's what it is. I mean, we are spending our children's money as a country, as a society, as a federal government. We are spending our children's money. By the way, we're going to illustrate this in a TV ad that we're taping next Wednesday. And the TV ad is going to include our 19-month-old granddaughter climbing the stairs on this mountain of debt. And we're going to make the point. We're going to ask the question, is this what we want to leave to our kids and to our grandkids? Now, how serious is it? Well, Mark Stein, who writes for National Review, was in Australia a couple months ago, and he came back and wrote about his experiences in Australia. And one of the things he said was this. He said the Australians, this is the business community and the political community, the Australians believe that the United States is not going to be able to solve this. They believe the United States is headed for collapse. And according to Mark Stein, the Australians are planning their business investments, or lack thereof, and their political world on the assumption that we are not going to solve this and that we are going to have a financial collapse comparable to where Greece is today. Okay, God willing, they're wrong. But any rational person looking at this is going to come to at least the position where they say could be. I also like to ask, what if you were on the board of control of some organization? Could be a business, could be a charitable organization, any organization at all. And the CEO came in and said, here's what our debt looks like, folks. How many of you would say, well, I think we'll just keep doing what we've been doing? Nobody is that irrational, right? I mean, everybody's going to say we either fold or we have to make some major changes. Pretty obvious, right? You'd think that'd be obvious to the people in D.C.? Oh no, it's not obvious at all. Now, according to the Rochester Post-Bulletin, my competition, Congressman Tim Walz, in his speech to the DFL State Convention, and I'm assuming that in the audience were a mix of Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Libertarians, and everything. I mean, assuming that's the case, I'm just reporting here. The Congressman Tim Walz said the way to deal with this is for the federal government to spend more money. I wish I were exaggerating. Right? I hope somebody here is going to say, oh no, that's not accurate. Well, I assure you it is. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But this is, in fact, what he says is the answer, is for the federal government to spend more money. And the theory, of course, is more stimulus. You spend more money to get the economy growing. Well, one of the reasons I don't think that works is because of what's pictured in this chart. And this chart describes, top line, the growth in the federal government in the last 42 years, 1970, compared to the growth in personal income. And this only goes to 2008. If we extended this to today, this line would be off the chart. because we've had that kind of astronomical growth in federal spending in the last 3 years.